I hit $100 million in net worth at age 31, but before that, I lost all my money twice. And the difference between me losing all my money the first two times and now are these rules. So this is no BS advice for making money and keeping it. Number one, passive income is a lie. If you think about how money is made, you make money during time because every minute we're alive, a minute passes, time passes, and we make money over that time period, which means every single person on planet Earth has a dollars per hour that they make. And so it's not that passive income doesn't exist just as much as active income doesn't exist. It's a spectrum where it's how active is it or how passive is the activity that I'm doing relative to the time that I'm investing. And so I would eliminate active versus passive and simply say, what is my return on time or how much do I make per hour? It's just that most people get really scared of that because like, no one should trade their hours for money. Everyone trades their hours for money. It's just that when they receive the money, it's just not denoted in hours. And so I think there's two downstream impacts in terms of changing your behavior around this that I had to apply. Number one is that I was obsessed with trying to find quick, easy, low, effort money things. And so I ended up spending tons of money on things that I was obsessed with, hoping would cost me no time to make. And I would put not nearly enough time to the things I was actively making money with and thinking, how could I just make my active income significantly higher? And I would get obsessed with the idea that everything I did actively had to be scalable or it wasn't worth it. Because if it's not scalable, then why should I bother? I shouldn't trade my time for money. But if I looked at what I was making over the last year and divided it by the amount of money I made per hour, this activity was 15 times what I was averaging per hour. So I should absolutely do as many hours of that until all of my hours are that. And then I should find something else I can trade my time for that's even higher. And so if you want a very humbling experience, look at how much you made last year and then divide it by 2,000 if you want to know how much you made just in a 40-hour work week. Now, if you want to look at how much you made per actual hour of being alive, you can divide it by around 8,000. Or just take that number and divide it by 4. And that's actually how much you make per hour. And so when you're looking at, is this worth my time? If it's more than that number, it probably is. And so what I should have done and what changed for me was that I stopped trying to invest my money from my active into trying to find more passive things and tried to say, how do I invest my money more into my active to multiply my active that I know is working? Number two, if you can't buy it twice, don't buy it once. Or even buy it 3 times or 4 times or 5 times over, don't buy it once. And the way that really shifted how I started spending money, or rather started saving money and not spending money, was when I started looking at how much time it took me to make the amount of money post-tax to buy whatever I wanted. And I remember this clear as day. I was working at Smoothie King as a blender tender, and I was making $6.75 an hour, and I had just gotten a raise from $6.25 an hour. I'm dating myself. Anyways, and while I was there, the coworkers that I had and I would always go to lunch next door at Cozy, which was like a sandwich shop, and it was like $13 for a sandwich, right? And a drink and chips and whatever, right? And so I remember looking at my check, and my $6.75 an hour after taxes and fees was like $6 an hour, and I was like, man, I gave up 2 hours of my 6-hour shift every shift to go buy lunch. And I was like, I'm literally giving a third of my earning away for lunch every single day. If I knew that I had to work the first 2 hours just to get the sandwich, I don't think I'd ever make that trade. And yet I was making it every day. And then I started thinking I'd go to the mall and like, oh, do you want a new shirt? And it was at the Gap and it was $30. And I was like, okay, well, shoot, that's a whole shift. And I was like, would I work a whole shift if someone just held up a shirt that I didn't need to do it? And I was like, I don't think I would. And so all of a sudden it started shifting how my buying happened, because I started feeling the pain associated with what it would take if I had to do that before getting the thing I was going to buy. And it completely changed my buying behavior. And to be very clear, saving money won't make you money, but saving money allows you to have money. And having money allows you to look further out. And when you look further out, you can take on bigger risks, which absolutely will make you more money. And when you're looking at the price of whatever the thing you're trying to buy is, obviously when I was a teenager looking at a shirt, I was looking at, okay, I'm making $6 an hour, a shirt's $30. But when you're an adult and you're making $100 an hour and you're looking at a $500 or $1,000 purchase, would you work 2 days in order to do that? I don't know. Would I? Probably not. And sometimes you think, hey, would I work all day for 2 days to go out with the boys for 3 hours on Saturday? I'd probably be like, guys, I'm not going to work for 2 days just to go have 3 hours of fun, right? That feel like I'd rather just not work the 2 days. And that was the thing is whenever I had I'd rather just not work than do that thing, then I was like, I shouldn't buy that thing. For example, when I was poor, I only spent cash. And so my easiest way of actually creating a budget was that I had a personal training client who paid me $2,000 a month in cash. And so 100% of my money that came in through the business and credit cards and everything else is just what went into my bank account. And the only thing I knew I could live on was inside of my wallet. And so as that got replenished, and the thing is that I'm so scared with money, or I was so frugal with money, that I would always make sure that I had more than that to make it for the next payment, because sometimes the guy would take a day or two. You pay on Wednesday rather than a Monday or whatever, and I need to make sure that I have food for Chipotle. 3, most people overestimate what they can accomplish in a year, and they underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. And every new employee that I have that walks into acquisition.com, the number one thing that they say they want is growth. And I have this talk with them, which is the 10-year $1 million contract. But it's less about the $1 million and more about take whatever your net worth is now and add a 0 to it, or add 2 zeros to it. You can accomplish that in a decade. If you look at the biggest companies in the entire world who were worth multiple billions from their inception until the time they were worth multiple billions, many times it's under 10 years, but it's still more than 5, more than 7. And so you can accomplish life-changing, crazy amounts of wealth in a decade. And so if you could write a contract to yourself and say, I will make no money for 10 years, but on the 10th year, I will add a 0 or 2 zeros or 3 zeros to my net worth, would you do it? And if the answer is yes, which it almost invariably is with every person who comes into my business, then I say, great, now act like it. And so if you knew that you would make this amount of money over that period of time, you would stop this obsession, myself included. This is me giving my advice to myself who lost it twice. When I was able to shift to, okay, what would I have to do that would make it unreasonable that I don't 10x in 10 years? Then all of a sudden I started making very reasonable bets that I knew would compound unto itself over that period of time. And then winning became inevitable rather than a game of chance. And so oftentimes you have potential earning and then actualized earning. And usually as you're realizing the potential earning you have, you're usually losing out on your investing into that potential, right? You're realizing the potential. And that's kind of like the kid that learns one skill and then immediately says, I'm gonna start a business opportunity around this one skill that makes me $5,000 a month. Or they have this one skill and say, hey, this company is willing to pay me $100,000 a year to go do this skill, where I have this other company that'll give me a free internship where I could 10x my potential earning in 3 years, but I'm gonna make $35,000 a year for the 3 years. Which one would you take? The problem is most people will take the $100,000 now and forego the investment in self. And that's the thing is we are the asset that we invest in, and the currency we invest into ourselves in is time, experience, and skills. Right? Skill is the outcome. The time and the effort is what we put into it to gain the experiences, which ultimately give us the skills. But if you're in an environment where you're not compounding your potential earning, then you're actually losing out long-term. You're ripping up your $1 million or your 10x or 100x contract for a decade from now so you can get the short, fast money today. And that's why in the early days when you have limited amounts of money but lots of time and energy, instead of putting your money in the S&P 500, I like to say, put it in the SME 500. Because the asset that is you will always beat the stock market. Number 4, you should only have to get rich once. In other words, don't bet what you have and need for something you don't have and don't need. And some of the gravest mistakes I made manifested in, for example, me getting into a partnership that I shouldn't have gotten into because I wanted even more faster. Now, when you get into a partnership, which is usually the time where you put the most risk on the table, one is you guarantee the largest decrease in your earning power. You pay with the most expensive thing you have, which is equity, to somebody else. And so people get obsessive about what they're 5%, 10% later when we're making money. But day one, they're like, all right, we cut the pie in half. Oh, we cut the pie into thirds. Right up front before anything's really happened. If you work with a partner or decide to partner up with somebody, one of your friends, one of your coworkers, this is coming from somebody who has 9 failed partnerships before I met Layla, and then that has now worked, and now I have successful partnerships. A partner needs to have one of these 3 things that you do not have. They either have to have money that you don't have, and then the clear contribution is that money. They need to have experience you don't have, and the clear contribution is that experience. Or number 3, they have time and energy that you don't have, and the clear contribution is that time and energy. And so I added that second part on, is that just because someone has experience, if they're not contributing it to the partnership clearly, then you're still not going to get the benefit from it. If they have the time and the energy, but it's not clearly defined how they're going to invest that time and energy into the things so you both get a return, then it's not going to be a good partnership. And I've lost so much money in partnerships, especially early on. One of my 2 big losses was from a partner. And a big part of it was I was insecure, and I thought I just had to have somebody else because I was afraid to do it on my own.